Fantastic. Again, thank you everybody for being here. We are joined today by Sean Branney, who is quite accomplished in writing and filming and prop and handout making, probably in other life skills as well. So Sean, if you don't mind, can you just introduce yourself and the HPLHS generally?
Absolutely. So hi, my name is Sean Branney, and I am one of the founders and proprietors of the HP Lovecraft Historical Society. We are the world's largest Lovecraft organization at the moment. We are based in Glendale, California, but we are an international enterprise, so we now have members in well over 50 countries and are doing Lovecraftian stuff with audience all around the world. In terms of my own personal background, I have been playing Call of Cthulhu since a weird friend of mine in 1982 gave me this boxed game with the unpronounceable name, and I didn't really quite know what it was, and finally busted into it one day and was like, it's one of those situations where I never looked back at Dungeons and Dragons again after that. And in those early days, I was doing theater in Denver, Colorado, and invited one of my fellow castmates over to play the game with a weird name at my house, a kid named Andy Lehman. And Andrew and I now have been at this 40 plus years. And the HP Lovecraft Historical Society really came into being out of, first playing the game Call of Cthulhu, and then as theater kids, we thought it would really be fun to step away from the kitchen table and the dice and actually take the game out in the real world. So we invented our own form of live action Lovecraftian role playing, which we call Cthulhu Lives. And we would stage our own, basically Call of Cthulhu games, but again, rather than sitting around a table, we would go hide clues in graveyards and, put things in different places in the real world and go through these live action versions of the game. And over the years, we became increasingly ambitious with it, and we're making more and more sophisticated props and more costumes and special effects. And then for locations, we were playing, in Death Valley. We were playing in the British Museum. Andrew rented a jet helicopter and flew out in the middle of the Mojave Desert for one. So the games got so big, they had the same complexity of making a motion picture. They were just being enjoyed by a half dozen people. So finally we decided, maybe we should actually get a lights and camera and actually start making motion pictures. So that out of our live action gaming, that sort of segued into filmmaking. We made the motion pictures, the Call of Cthulhu, the Whisper in Darkness. And then we've done a whole lot of audio stuff over the years. We started with some just fun Lovecraftian musical stuff like A Shoggoth on the Roof and our Lovecraftian Christmas carols, A Very Scary Solstice. And then we started playing around with doing old 1930s style radio dramas based on Lovecraft stories. And we created this series called Dark Adventure Radio Theater that I was just telling Evan here. We are just releasing the 29th and 30th episodes in that series. So I said, we're old. We've been at this a long time. And I tell you all that just to give a little bit of background about who I am and where I'm coming from when it comes to props, because one of the things that really made Call of Cthulhu a special and different experience, it was really a very foundational thing, was for people who played Dungeons and Dragons back in the day and things, that when suddenly the game master hands you a thing and it's an actual tangible object and it's yours to study and contemplate and pull whatever information you can from it. The notion of props in gaming, at least for us, so brought the game to life and brought a whole new level of immersion. That props became an invitation, an entryway into the stories to more deeply engage with them and to let the meta reality of the story become that much more real. So props have always been, an absolutely foundational part of how we approach playing Call of Cthulhu, how we approach the live action stuff. The props may have been bigger and more sophisticated, but they served the exact same role through it. And even, going into making things like motion pictures and things of finding the physical objects that are great, representations and bridges to pull the audience more deeply into the experience of the game. So I'm going to chat a little bit about how sort of the underlying ideas and philosophy that we bring to prop making, what has worked for us in the past. And as I'm in the middle, I've got a couple new Call of Cthulhu things I'm writing right now. And am very much like folks who are authors on the Miskatonic repository, grappling with what's the best way to do this, what do I want to put in, what's too much, what's too little, to try and hit those sweet spots. So anyway, that's me, and that's where I'm coming from on this.
That's really great. That's very exciting. Yeah, I mean, it's really an interesting time, I think, for those of us on the Miskatonic repository, right? Because you can see the products that are coming out graduating very slowly from, here's a text box that you can print out and cut out, to now there are scenarios with music files attached. I did one of those. I had someone do a creepy version of a public domain 20s song, and we use that, in a version of The Haunting. People have videos, right? I don't think people have started to do 3D printer files, but I wouldn't be surprised if the platform supports that, and so there's kind of the dual questions of what can we do to enhance when we're selling products, things that can be transmitted via the internet to the customers, or in the more classic mode, if you're showing up to a Chaosium Con or an Origins or a Gen Con and you have this scenario that you've written and published, what can we bring to that? And I am hearing that one of the scenarios does have an STL printer file, so that is on the table. So I guess, can you talk a little bit? I know that, I think when we were chatting earlier, the first thing I was going to ask about was research, and getting, because you're famous for phenomenal, historically accurate or historically convincing pieces, among other things. But I guess before that, like, how do you decide what's appropriate, if you're going to put the effort into creating something in support of a game? How do you, is the impulse to like make a news article for everything, for every possible library use role, and then paring down from there? Like, how do you kind of get a feel for what's going to have the biggest impact and be worth the effort to make a physical artifact?
Sure. Well, let me start with one just bit of semantics that we tend to use, and I think it's useful for as a concept for people who are writing for Call of Cthulhu, and that's the distinction that we make between a prop and a handout. And at least the way we use those terms is, a prop is something that is in the world of the game. Props are objects that investigators in the game can find. So you find the matchbook, you find the torn out page from the New York Times, you find an object that those characters find in the world in which they're participating. For us, we use the term handouts for things that a keeper still may want to give out and communicate to the players, but they're not inside the world of the game. And so, as an example of that, you might want to give out a handout to the players, say that this is what you know about Newark, New Jersey. So here's a listing of, important facts that your characters would all know from being in Newark, New Jersey, but it's not a page of the, a Newark newspaper. It's not something that exists in the world of the game. It's something that exists outside of it. An interesting corner of that, tends to be maps. And we do maps in both styles, and both styles I think are important and can be relevant in games, in that, I'm sitting in my house at the moment and I don't have a map of my house. A map of my house kind of makes no sense. I don't need it. My dogs don't need it. Everybody knows how to get around my house. It's a small place. So, and lots of times keepers want to give a map of the creepy house to the players. So the players go, oh, the staircase is around, it's to the left of the bathroom. Oh, if you go in the kitchen doesn't lead to the dining room. You have to walk through the parlor to get to the dining room. You know, it helps the gameplay by answering questions, because we're not actually in the meta reality of the game. We're looking at it from the outside. So handouts, particularly architectural ones, are really useful to explain the space. And the inverse of that is, if you wanted a prop of my house, that would almost have to be, for it to make any sense, it would have to either be an architectural blueprint that someone actually created in the world, in the world of the story, or it could be a prop that a character in the game made rather than the game master. So I just may tend to use those terms of handouts and props. One is not, like I said, one is not necessarily better, because it kind of depends on what the function is of this thing you're giving out, and making the determination whether it should be a handout, so it's a tool for the gamers, or a prop so that it's an actual artifact that's inside the world of the game.
That's a really good distinction. And I also want to, and I'm guilty of doing this myself, just beg, if you are making a map and it has keeper only information, please, in some way make a player facing map available also, because it's very hard as a keeper to eliminate, the big sign that says secret thing here if I want to share the map with the players. And I guess digitally we could potentially do that with layers. Otherwise, you can just put two different versions in the product. But while we're on the subject of maps, that's a pit I've fallen into before. So
yeah, sure. And there are lots of times where part of the fun of a scenario is the object that's not readily apparent. So you certainly don't want to, you don't want to give away any spoilers, or even have a map that has a conspicuously unmarked room or piece of negative space, that kind of tips your hand to the fact that there is something, something to be had in a space. You just, I don't know. I like to make my players work for it, no matter what it is. It's very rarely coming on a silver platter when I play, because, for my money, that's a lot of the fun. And I think I personally find it a lot more rewarding when you've had to work and tease out and solve something, rather than the keeper goes, here you go, it's X, Y, or Z.
So that sounds like we're starting to get towards this then, is what are some good candidates for kind of high value stuff, either as a handout for its informational value, or as a prop for the experience of being in the world. We have if you had to pick, a limited amount of things you can do that with, right? How do you kind of know what's worth investing in?
Yeah, sure. So, it's both it's almost a cliche at this point, but I don't know. I still find them both fun and useful, and end up including them in just about everything I write. And they end up showing up, and we do prop sets for Chaosium.
Mm-hmm.
We work directly with them, and they use them too. And that's the ubiquitous newspaper clipping.
Mm-hmm.
Um, newspapers were such an essential part of the communication of information, of what was recorded and disseminated in the really the pre-internet age, really through the 70s and into maybe almost up to 1990. So even in almost all games except for truly contemporary ones, they are a part of the world, going back to even say the late 18th century is where newspapers start
Mm-hmm.
really gaining traction. So because it is the place of record for information, it does make a lot of sense, and it's immensely useful for you, the game author, to be able to go, oh boy, I wish the players knew that the somebody was drowned in the duck pond in 1851, or the members of the esoteric order were all rounded up by the police in 1892. That kind of information, that learning that kind of background is a great form of context in stories, in gaming stories, and it's a fun way to do them. So I really do think newspaper clippings are foundational, and I just have one key suggestion for people who would like to incorporate them in the most compelling manner possible in writing their games, and that is, if old newspapers are not something that's personally familiar to you, that you spent much time with, go look at some. Go look at real ones. Because as guys who publish, fake newspaper stuff all the time, we spend a ton of time doing research and looking at what did an 1850s newspaper does not look like an 1870s newspaper, and they're different in the 1890s. And in 1905, the typographic fashions have changed, the illustration styles have changed. So if you want to include a newspaper clipping, really take the time to think about, okay, who's publishing it? All newspapers are not created equal, and big city newspapers don't work like small town newspapers. Who's writing this article? Is it a professional journalist? Is it an author who knows what they're doing? Is it the guy who owns the newspaper? Is it basically somebody who just has a column of rumors that they slap together? It's not that any one of those is necessarily wrong or right, but you want to think about the specific circumstances of your story, that this is an article that was printed in this time and place in history, in this location. What might it have looked like? And the stuff is source material is readily available online. Sometimes you find yourself trying to find something that's really obscure and hard to find, but generally speaking, without getting out of your chair, you could find out what a rural Michigan newspaper looked like in 1921, and frankly get a whole page of it, and see what types of articles are they covering, and then you can and that's the first part I suggest, is doing research in terms of giving context, so when you're writing the content of your article, you can make it as true to the flavor of what the original would have been. And then the second side of it becomes the production side of it, of going, okay, now I know what it is I want to make. I know what my article is going to say and what information it's going to cover. Then you can get into the technical side of it, which is how do I make a prop that looks like the actual thing I'm talking about, and not sort of newspaper in a very vague sense.
Yeah.
We see a lot of real unfortunate ones that sometimes I just think, have you ever actually looked at an actual newspaper? Because the newspaper you've made looks like someone told you about what a newspaper is like, and it has the vague sense of it, but it's not really what they actually look like. So there you go. There's my diatribe on newspapers.
Yeah, so we're gonna dig in, I think, on both sides, if that's okay. I think we'll start with the research side, and then we'll get to production. So research, I know that I have a beloved subscription to newspapers.com, which is pretty good, although I don't know, I'm not sure about the copyright, so don't necessarily copy stuff out of there and do it. But then also, I use our local library here, for example, in the Baltimore area, has historical archives of the Baltimore Afro-American, which is not covered by newspapers.com. So a lot of the you mentioned, who's doing the writing. I think people forget the ethnic newspapers, the local, those kind of newspapers, which are sometimes lost. But what do you guys use? What's your go-to as far as finding these resources for look and feel, for content, for font choices? How do you find those things?
At this point in the game, it really is a question of how specific our need is. We contact reference librarians all around the world. And reference librarians are awesome people, and they often, in the internet age where so much stuff is self-service now, they don't feel the love anymore. And when you write to somebody in Brisbane, Australia, and they haven't gotten a question from some guy in America who's making props, they, on the whole, love being asked and are happy to pull whatever information they can. On the whole, we've found reference librarians all around the world have been really, really helpful. So, don't feel like, oh, geez, I can't find anything from a newspaper printed in, Vienna in 1932. That's certainly a great way to go and look. We also have a guy in Washington, D.C., who we send over to the Library of Congress all the time.
Okay, cool.
He's kind of our errand guy there, and he's really great about doing that, but is able to pull when we need super specific stuff. And a lot of times we're not necessarily after something that painfully specific. And sometimes it's worth browsing around, different newspapers at different times when you may stumble into something that you love the look and feel of, I recently was doing obituaries for, a newspaper that we were doing, and, just looked at a lot of them, and obituaries are something that the styles of them, nowadays they're so drab, but oh my goodness, were they poetical in the late 1800s to what now seems just a comical kind of level. The language that they, it's so and so was embraced in the arms of Jesus and taken up, and just very light on, he died of emphysema, and very, very heavy on the poetry of his spiritual journey that's to come. So there can be a lot of fun to have that, but certainly newspapers.com is a great place to go. There are a lot of individual newspapers that keep their own archives on hand, so sometimes it's worth searching for the time, place, or topic that you're trying to find, like with obituaries, to go look for obituary 1893 and just see what you find. And there's can be scads of interesting things that are suitable for you that you didn't even necessarily know that you were going to go down that particular path until you find it. So
yeah, I've kind of gotten rabbit holed in some of the society sections sometimes, because we don't really have those now, right? But you used to have
absolutely, the
3 and 4
and
pages, who's
gossip
having
and
tea,
rumors
whose
about
house,
what's going on in town can be really, really delightful. I'm and as a theater guy, old theater reviews too can cover so much more than just a review of the content of it, but the whole experience and who was there, and the whole social side of what's going on in the time and place where the reviewer happened to be. There's a lot more information than we tend to see, and when we think of a movie review or that kind of information at this point in time.
Yeah, like somebody gets up and walks out during a play, and that's like the
and
big
it makes
item.
The paper.
Yeah. And then on the production side, so we've got both the digital approach, right? And then I think Brian was also asking about physical, actually getting that kind of newsprint feel to it.
Sure.
So I guess the digital can either be included with the product or used on virtual tabletops. And I'm assuming, sorry, for the viewers, I'm assuming that any digital file is okay for virtual tabletop. But if I'm wrong about that, please let me know, and we'll try to address those needs specifically. I don't have a ton of Roll20 experience, so please, shout if we're not serving your question there. So I guess we'll start, with the digital half of the design. But
sure. And we realize, not everybody is a professional graphic designer and doesn't necessarily have the latest version of InDesign and know how to use it to really create a great facsimile. And, and that's okay, because I don't think the gaming audience necessarily expects perfection. They just want to get something that will ideally, a good prop will ideally always just pull players further into the game, and if it's too far off the mark, okay, maybe it pushes them away. But on the whole, everybody, tends to be pretty forgiving, even on kind of clunky ones, to go, oh, okay, it doesn't really look like the New York Times, but it says New York Times on it. We're going to say it's the New York Times. Let's go. So I think there is an underlying sense of goodwill that's there. So, and I would suggest if you are trying to recreate something that you found that's out there, but you say you want to swap in your own article about the creepy cult and the drownings in the duck pond, instead of the society column about who was at the ballet, you can still really sit down with a ruler, and really pay attention to how that original paper was made, and go, oh, okay, the columns are 2.6 inches wide, the gutters between the columns are this wide, the rules between the columns, if there are any, are this heavy. Look how often we get a headline. There are some newspapers where the style is to, you have your original headline that introduces the thing, but then there's a slug line that comes along almost every paragraph. Look at how your source material use that. How do they do the byline? How do they handle the date? How, is it centered? Is it to the left? Is it, what other information? Sometimes the weather is put in up there, what's going on. There's all kinds of nifty little details that tend to be in the newspaper if you really take the time to look at, again, and think about how the people who were putting together the source material in the first time, and they were doing it with lead type by hand. They don't have the nice tools that we have, but what did they do? So then when you go to start laying out your own, you can, go, okay, this, my columns are going to be exactly this wide, and the gutter space is very close between them. The text is justified, the text is non-justified. It's, there's a lot of the specific typographic, techniques that were used again at different times. So don't reinvent the wheel, let the source material that you're drawing from give you the rule and the style guidelines to make something. Because if you follow their guidelines, you're going to end up with something that looks like what they look like. And even if you're, doing it in Microsoft Word's a pretty sophisticated tool, and it will let you do, all kinds of crazy tricks to try and, you have to get to know it and how it handles a lot of conventions, but it is not without its capabilities. We really like InDesign. It's a flexible tool. That's what we use for all these kinds of props, for things that are text documents. Yeah, in almost all instances, I think at this point it would get laid out in InDesign. So yeah.
And then I think Brian's question, okay, was it? Oh, okay. So yeah, so the question was on like printing onto actual newsprint, or the physical side of it, and once you've got it laid out looking authentically.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess everybody's done the like soaking it in tea for a while, but there's probably more sophisticated ways to do it than that.
Yeah, there are. If you have a office supply store that you can go to, or an art supply store, there are some tablets, just basic, usually unruled writing tablets, that are printed on paper that's pretty darn close to newspaper rag. It's a little better. They tend to be a little better quality than the newspaper rag is, but they're not bad. And that's where I would suggest you start looking. Is I don't know, there used to be a brand called Big Chief, just writing pads. That was what they were called, but the actual paper type is not too far off. And one other thing setting in your when you're printing them, I suggest you experiment with a little bit is most inkjet printers have settings for different paper types, which will affect the amount of ink that gets laid down on the page. And generally speaking, any of these rag type papers want less ink on them. And the problem tends to be when you're doing this kind of work at home that they get oversaturated and they're over ink, and this kind of paper tends to bleed a lot. So if you have quite a bit of text, suddenly your text is kind of oozing out of the letters and coming to life, and that's not, in most instances, going to be the quality that you necessarily want. So when you're making your own hard copies, playing around with your ink settings to find out, oh, geez, if I actually print it at gray, 85% gray instead of black, I actually end up getting something that's closer to what I want on this particular type of paper.
That's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to then go on from newspapers and text props into other kinds of things that might be appropriate either for online distribution or for people bringing, things that I guess a solo creator could reasonably make, right?
Yeah, sure. So,
So
yeah, looking at the types of things, the repository, like Chaosium, some people, say it's kind of unfair for us to compete with Chaosium, and we don't consider ourselves competing with them as trying to complement them, because ultimately they're publishing books, and the stuff they make needs to be in books. And so we can throw in a Chinese scroll that's actually in Chinese, because we put our stuff in a box. Their stuff has to go in a book. And I think, most folks writing for the repository are also kind of stuck with, your customers are either buying a book or a PDF download of a book. So you're really tending to lean towards documents and things like, matchbooks or, sandwich bags or, other types of three-dimensional objects can become tricky unless you can either and this is another technique worth considering, though, when we get into really gnarly stuff that we wish we could produce some kind of complicated three-dimensional object. Boy, wouldn't it be cool to have the dead, desiccated body of Brown Jenkins? Yeah, that would be cool, but mass manufacturing those can be difficult. So one of the things we have done on a number of occasions is to do photographs of them. And so we make a prop, an actual 3D physical thing, and we set up whatever kind of, whether we've done one in a laboratory setting and the bits of Brown Jenkins were at a construction site or, whatever, and make the thing and take it out and then go and take a photograph, because the photograph can then be a prop in the game. So okay, maybe your investigators don't find Brown Jenkins, but they find this incredible photo that somebody took of Brown Jenkins, and now you have a prop that the manufacturing and distribution of it through the Miskatonic repository is not a fundamental impossibility, and it can still be aged up to look like an actual in whatever time period, prop from whatever time period your game is taking place of. So photographs of things that can't be where you can't actually do the thing is, I think, a great way to consider. And you can also hide a lot of details. You can make a photo a very information rich experience, and if you have a compelling enough one, the players will want to spend a long time looking at, going, yeah, but what about that thing there? Is that a finger? Is that a what is that? And that's that's good quality gameplay when your players are working hard to try and dissect whatever the prop is.
that's cool. So yeah, it's an interesting, getting, I guess, into prop theory, right? I forget sometimes as I'm like agitating over, oh my God, what can I make for this thing? It's, it's ideally it's conveying some information about the scenario, right? And it's not just kind of decoration. So I guess, what are some things that you've done, some examples that spring to mind, of like non-text stuff, right? that really kind of drew players in, conveyed some secrets or some information, and sort of furthered the mystery there.
Yeah, we've certainly done lots of, we've done things, just things that come to mind, cocktail napkins, matchbooks, things that are from the world. A key, can be a great thing. Again, it becomes tricky in this kind of repository world, going, okay, well, do I want to give a photograph of the key so at least people can see it, even if I can't actually put a physical key in? I said we're a little spoiled in a lot of the prop sets we make, because we actually can put a physical key in, or some kind of, other physical object. Things like stamps, postcards, vintage postcards are real ones are relatively easy to get, and they're relatively easy to fake and make your own ones that show whatever you want on them, because postcard is nice because you get both sides of it. You get, if it's been written to someone, you get all the text, which can be full of clues and information. You've got the stamp, you've got the postmark on it. There's a whole bunch of different things, each of which can be relevant gaming information, that can be imparted. So that's you can get a lot of bang for your buck in that. Also, the notion of doing a full letter, where it's a lot of times we just deal with the text of the letter, but it's like the letter, what kind of envelope did it go in? How was it addressed? What was the stamp? And in your story world, the person might have used the outside of the envelope to try and communicate something to the reader, as well. So that there can be a lot of fun thinking about the packaging that goes around those sorts of items.
Yeah, I was struck, by what you said about taking a photo of that, right? Because even if we are doing exclusively digital, a lot of us will go to the trouble to create a realistic looking image of a letter, but then we leave off the packaging. And I'm just thinking exactly to include another image of the envelope, and even, to have the postmark, where it was from. Like, oh, that's weird. They shouldn't have been within 100 miles of where this letter came from.
Sure. And the date,
Yeah.
the date on the postmark doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and that's relatively easy with a couple of historical examples to put together.
Right.
Okay, so Misty has a question. It's how much do you take into account realism for characters versus player ability? Misty, I'm gonna just see if I can clarify. You're talking about the ability for a player to get information from a prop versus their character, like rolling spot hidden or history or something like that. You can either and if that's wrong, just correct me, but I think that's what we're getting at here, is like separating out, like your in-game ability to interpret.
Yeah, we're honestly, I think it's a style thing. It's a style of how you like to game. So my personal druthers are to go as realistic as possible, and if it's supposed to be in 19th century blackletter German, then we typeset it in blackletter and have it translated into German, and that can often lock the players out. Though they go, I don't read German, and that's where okay, you make a read German skill roll, and then the keeper can say, this is what it says. But we tend to err towards the side of making the props really what they're supposed to be. And if it's messy handwriting, or was so spattered in blood it's hard to read, well, guess what? It's spattered in blood and it's hard to read. And what you see is what you get. A kinder, gentler keeper again might say, okay, well, give me a spot hidden roll, and if it succeeds, then I do think it's nice if you have a prop whose the nature of the prop, or the typography, or the handwriting, or whatever it is really hard to make sense of, to give a clean version of that text to the keeper. So if the keeper wants to say, okay, make such and such a roll, we don't the game doesn't have to come screeching to a halt while they deal with trying to read, some kind of difficult black letter font or something that's not very user friendly. And then if you have a keeper who does enjoy watching his players grapple with, trying to suss out what's there physically on the page, then you can go, no, sorry, what you get is what you get, but then it becomes a stylistic point for the game master to make the decision what he or she thinks is going to best keep the momentum of the game going. And at the end of the day, it's all about having fun. Yeah. And we want to make sure that the props are amping up the fun, not being a anti-fun downer sort of thing.
Yeah, and Misty clarified, and it's a great clarification, sort of questions of accessibility for the player, and obviously we don't want to produce something that is impossible to read, or even too difficult to read for someone, just for the human being. Or if it is intentionally difficult, we do want to have like the clear text summary, things like that. Just I guess, and Sean, I don't know if you guys think about these kind of accessibility questions, but the equivalent of like alt text on a picture, and how to kind of provide that in a scenario, because I don't always think about that, and I should. But
yeah, we do think about that. One of our sort of litmus tests for props, particularly the prop, we do our gaming props, but also our dark adventure shows all come with props that are from the story. So they're not necessarily, you don't necessarily game with them. They don't work quite in the same way that gaming props do. Is really just to give some thought to the fun of them. And Andrew and I were having this discussion just this last week with determining the list of props that we were going to include with these new shows we're releasing. And it was like, okay, here's 7 good candidates. But it's like, number 5, you could look at it. It's in a language you don't know. You never know, only a very small percentage of people would be able to actually read it. And if you can't read it, there's something about intrinsically fun about the form factor that you go, okay, this is still really great. Because maybe, we did a great page from Una Sprechlich in Gulten that, it's in German, but even if you don't read German, you can get the weird stuff that's going on, and there's an illustration, and there's other notes in the margins, and there's enough things that even separate from the actual text of the book, there's plenty there for the player to engage with. And I think that is, one of the ultimate things is that the best props are engaging. Again, a photo that you can spend time analyzing is way more fun than a photo that's completely clear. You look at it, you've got it, you're done with it, you move on. So everything, and that example you were bringing in before, that moment when the postmark, the date or the place or something does not coincide with the letter, that brings a new level of engagement that wasn't there when there was just the text of the letter before, and there was no other, context to try and figure out. On the whole, I find that players really enjoy those extra levels of context and trying to figure out, connect the dots where they can.
Yeah, and Misty, I want to think about that a little bit more, just as a writer on the repository. Because we have this whole, like, you never want to lock an important piece of information behind a skill roll. And we certainly don't want to lock information behind a real world skill roll. And so I'm thinking, what we can do is a couple of things, right? You can have, some guidance for the keeper, like, these are the key things in this handout or prop that you want your people to get out of this. But then also maybe, the equivalent of an alt text. So if we are doing in that example of the envelope with the date, just create a little bit of text that can be distributed that says, this is an envelope. It was postmarked this date from this location, without the keeper facing information of this is why that's important, but just something. So even if someone can't easily read that or make out the design of it, they can say, okay, this is what I'm being presented with here, and then think about it. So you're describing the important parts without necessarily revealing what's important about them. And that's a cool thing. I don't think that that's something that has come up a lot in the community, but I think that's a good question. Um, okay, cool. So I think there may be other questions. We've got about 13 minutes left. So I just want to see what questions we have, and then we can go back to kind of a more of a free form conversation. But additional questions, additional thoughts, someone chasing a white whale of a prop that you don't know how to make and you're on the brink of madness with it. No? Okay. Oh, so I got a hand up. Wait, I don't know who that's sorry, Zoom. John, you want to type your question or do you want to ask do you want to unmute? Either way is fine.
I was going to unmute if that's okay.
Yeah, great.
Well, I had a question about the Cthulhu Lives LARP that you were in.
Yeah.
Is that in any way related to the Cthulhu Live role-playing game that Robert McLaughlin came up with?
No. We started doing our games a little bit before Robert and his group were doing theirs, and they published a rule book through Chaosium. I want to say this is the late 80s, something like that would seem about right, maybe 1990. But yeah, we had no connection with his group, and really we actually kind of had slightly different styles of LARPing between us. At the end of the day, LARP is LARP, and you're in costume and out having fun. And that's what counts. But but go ahead.
I was just gonna say I've played with him at conventions and
Oh,
I
yeah?
bought his books and run them for my friends. I want to run another one.
Oh, that's great.
Are you guys have any more plans to do more movies? Because I loved Call of Cthulhu and I loved Whisper in Darkness. And
Sure. We do have more plans. When we made those films, we fully self-produced them. We paid for them out of pocket with a couple of investors to help us get through Whisper. And most of the projects we're pitching now are things that are at considerably bigger budgets to where we wouldn't have the capital to produce them ourselves, even if we wanted to risk that kind of money. So we're now, really dealing with the film and television industry in a more traditional manner of, trying to put together financing for these films and television projects the way that it's kind of traditionally done. So that also is, it's an uphill battle to shake that kind of money out of the folks who have it, but it happens. There's certainly never been more interest in Lovecraft related projects than there is right now. So we continue to shop our stuff around.
I loved those two movies, and I love that they were done on a low budget because I felt the effects you did were so effective. And I hope you get the financing and that these movies will come out. And because I definitely, I don't know if they'll come to the local theater, but if not, I'll definitely stream them.
That's great. Well, thank you, John. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks. I want to move on to Leslie's question, but that was great, and it's funny that comes up all the time, right, John? That should make you feel at least a little bit good, right? That
it's lovely.
Thousands of people ready to jump on the next
somebody
one.
else likes it. That's a very gratifying thing. So
yeah. So this is Leslie. This is a great question. What are your feelings about, from our side on the repository, including directions for keepers about sort of how they can make props from their home? So like we might, include a digital image of a cocktail napkin, but then also some instructions like, if you want to make this at home, go get this kind of thing and do that. Is that useful? Is that overkill?
I'm probably the wrong guy to ask. I think it's great, but we'll spend weeks working on a single prop, months. We'll spend thousands of dollars working on a single prop to get it right. So we're the wrong guys to ask. But I think if you make it compulsory, in order for this prop to be effective, you must do this very difficult process. That can be a big ask, and it's like, some of your players might live in, Brooklyn apartments, and some of them may live on farms in North Dakota and have very different types of resources available to them. So, I just think you want to keep in mind that anybody trying to follow depending on how difficult what you're asking of them is, you may be doing them a favor, but you might not. So
Sure. And then Misty, I appreciate your suggestion, about having editors who can review scenarios and props for accessibility issues. I'm going to mention that to Bridget, Jeffries, and Heinrich, and we can add that as a thing on the so in the Facebook Miskatonic Repository Creator Circle, we have a spreadsheet which I can't remember the name of, but it's like creators helping creators or something like that. And I'm going to suggest that we ask for people with expertise in reviewing for accessibility, just like people can do sensitivity reads or developmental edits or things like that. I think that's a great thing.
Sound idea. Because
okay, John, not totally sure I understand. How do you get your money back for expensive props? If this is as a question for Miskatonic repository authors, I will say abandon all hope, ye who enter here. We do this for love. That's my. I'm gonna honestly say, like, don't count on it, right? Just because it's there have been a handful of scenarios that have sold in the thousands of copies or the hundreds of copies, right? But if you're counting on Drive Through RPG to make you back over $1,000 that you're spending on a prop, just don't.
No, what I was actually asking is if you're running a LARP,
okay.
Like how much, you don't want to exclude people who can't pay, but how much, should you expect people to pay so that you can at least recuperate some of your money? Has that ever come up in a LARP for either of you?
Oh yeah, no, it's it's a very valid question, and actually, I think Evan's answer in terms of the Miskatonic repository actually applies to the LARP world too.
Sorry.
there are some folks who are producing LARPs as commercial enterprises. There's some folks out of Italy. We've been talking with some folks out of Wales, where they're running them as businesses. So in those situations, the cost that people are paying to play has to sort of ultimately subsidize the cost that goes into your, props and costumes and things like that. In our games, it was really incumbent on the keeper. If you were going to run a LARP, we didn't charge people to play, and if you couldn't afford to put on an expensive game, then you couldn't afford to put on an expensive game. We did a couple where we did one where we rented a mansion, and we did one where it was like a full formal dinner party. And I think maybe we asked people to chip in a few bucks for the cost of their dinner that they got to eat, and that kind of thing. But really, if you're not doing it as a commercial thing, it's not unreasonable to ask your players to do a pay what you can, going, hey, I've invested a lot of money to put on this experience for you guys, and if you can throw in a few bucks at the hat at the end of it, I'd sure appreciate it. But as Evan's saying, you might not want to bank on recouping your investment, in that particular manner. So
I'm going to abuse my privilege as moderator / interviewee, specifically to ask about the detective's license that's in your investigator kit.
Yeah.
Is that based on a specific historical license, or essentially I'm working on a project. I want to make one for Maryland, and I cannot find what a Maryland license looked like. So I don't know if I ought to just give up and copy the general feel of the one that you've got, or, if there are resources for where I can find that kind of stuff.
I think that was an eBay find. Andrew is a maniac on eBay, prowling it all the time, really, for source documents and source.
That's material. A great, Leslie. There's another research option, by the way. Just eBay is not one I had thought of.
Yeah, because all it happens all the time that Grandpa had a box of old documents, and I'm selling them for $9. So we get stuff on eBay all the time. Yeah, I'd have to. I'll ask him about that one in particular because I don't remember where that one came from. But yeah, I'll
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
let you know. So
Okay.
anybody
Yeah,
else?
and
Any
I'm
other
just
questions? I
thinking,
feel
yeah,
like
other questions. We
time's
got a few
flying
more
by.
minutes. Okay. You can find a dream prop. Yes, from our friends at the Miskatonic Playhouse. Would like to know if there's a dream prop you would like to make that you have not yet made.
Yeah, there's a few. There's a few. There's an interesting question when it comes to dream props because there's the dream prop where you're making just one. We will make a Necronomicon, or we are, because the HPLHS is a business, we are often trying to make things that we can make as products, so you guys can buy them and have your own copy of our dream prop. So the difference between a one-off and something that gets recreated is a fascinating challenge we're up against all the time. The actual Mego brain cylinder, we had to make some for our movie The Whisper in Darkness, and because of production demands, those did not come out the way they were supposed to come out in the movie. But we just had to live with them. But we're still working to solve that and try and make it as a product that could be manufactured. And we've got engineers in 3 continents working on it right now, trying to solve a way to make that. And Evan, we did our scenario, the treasure map, and the treasure map has one particular prop in it that's something that we've been able to make one really good one, and it's great, and we can take it around with us when we play it around. But in terms of manufacturing it,
yeah,
in a cost-effective manner to where we could make lots of them for everybody, we've yet to be able to crack that nut and find a solution for it. So it does kind of vary. The really great 1,000-page Necronomicon would be, I guess, if there were a dream prop, that would be pretty great. And a really great Mego brain cylinder would be pretty great too.
Yeah. Let me know when you're crowdfunding the brain cylinders. I need one for reasons.
Okay, so. we'll set you up.
Great. Well, thank you so much, everybody. This was great. I wish we had 3 or 4 more hours, but Sean's got stuff to do. So
yeah, absolutely. If anybody ends up with a pressing question though, or something specific you need help with, stop by hplhs.org, shoot us an email, let us know what you're up against, and we'll try and at least weigh in with an opinion or something for you and help you out if you can. Like, what was it, a Maryland detective's license?
Yeah,
we got to be able to find something in that regard. So
yeah,
we'll see what we can do.
All right, thanks.
All right, people, great to see you.
All right, thanks
care.
everybody. Talk to you
All
soon.
right.
We have one more panel in an hour, which is writing for stage and screen, getting your scenarios onto streaming platforms. So, all right, see you later.
All right, bye-bye.